VikesNow. I am Dustin Baker. Let's see, by the time you guys and gals are watching this, we will be less than a week. We'll be about 6 days away from the NFL draft where the Vikings are expected to take a quarterback via second trade up the board. We shall see if that actually occurs. I am here tonight with a bunch of guys, as you will see, but foremost, I have Eric Thompson, a first-time guest. He's a longtime writer at Daily Norseman. Eric, how are you? We got 6-7 days to go before this draft.
And I cannot wait until it's here because this is officially the absolute silly season where anyone will throw anything against the wall and see if it sticks. And it's just it's 98% BS. I just want to know who the Vikings end up with a week from probably right now as we're recording this later on Thursday night. We'll hopefully have our quarterback of the future or a couple players that everyone complains about.
Are you thinking that the bullshit just kind of started today, or do you think that the last month has been a facade of bullshit?
It feels like the Super Bowl was 7 months ago at this point. It's nothing but it's so hard to sift through, and you get all these aggregator accounts and you get these agent fed stories that are absolutely just garbage. Yeah, I just get to the actual football related substance. I am so ready for it.
All right, well, I think our objective here tonight is to do just that. I'm going to kick it off to Brevin, who co-hosts the show with me at times. How are you, Brevin?
Pretty good. Another Saturday. Is it Saturday? No, it's Thursday.
No,
it's
Thursday, dude.
Oh,
I'm so off.
You're used to Saturdays when we collaborate. All right, what do you got for Eric Thompson to kick off the show, question-wise?
Yeah, Eric, first of all, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us again.
Of course.
This is kind of my least favorite time of year mixed in with favorite. It's a love-hate relationship just because of the really stupid theories you see going around, like the Herbert trades and the Jefferson to New England trades. But is there one kind of outlandish, I don't want to say conspiracy theory, but one outlandish proposal you've seen that you're kind of rocking with?
I mean, when Dustin sent me the list of questions, this one was the toughest one for me to answer because there's so many to choose from this time of year. I mean, when it comes to the NFL draft, especially in the final couple of weeks beforehand, basically there aren't very many permutations left of the wild BS that hasn't already been tossed out on Twitter by all these aggregator accounts and all that kind of stuff. But I think if I had to pick a favorite one that I think might actually come true, I don't think it's going to, but that the whole Atlanta would have to concede some sort of draft capital for the illegal tampering kind of thing like that. I mean, just because that'll be the missing piece for the Vikings to trade up to have enough ammo to get into the top 3 quarterbacks, something like that. Again, I don't think it'll actually happen. But tampering, because if you think Atlanta's the first team to ever get this close to the actual illegal tampering, all 32 teams have done it, it'd be weird for the NFL to suddenly arbitrarily say, "Yep, this is the one. This is the team that we're going to punish." But at least, I mean, there's a little doubt that the Falcons probably did not follow the letter of the law. If they really wanted to, say that, well, there was technically illegal tampering, you should give the trade swap picks to the Vikings or something like that. I wouldn't be opposed to it. So I think just because it technically can happen, again, I don't think it will. At least that's that, and it has a favorable outcome for the Vikings. So that'll be my favorite one.
Do you?
Yeah.
So this was kind of advanced by Mike Florio. I think he's been the puppet master of this theory. If that does come to fruition, will it? Do you think it'll actually be on Thursday?
It can't be that late, can it? Because that would just throw everything out of whack. And I just don't think it'll happen.
Okay.
Again, because it's never officially happened. There's no precedent for it. And Florio's really and he is deep down a tortured Vikings fan, so maybe he's trying to will it into existence with his lawyer speak. But yeah, again, if it hasn't been announced yet, that would be so weird to do it on the eve of the draft or the morning of the draft, just because that would throw everything completely out of whack. And of course, ruin all these mock drafts. That's because all of them were perfect up till that, right?
Yeah. I think the only way that this one would come to fruition would be if undercover Goodell really wants to make an example and put his foot down. But I've said now for over a week on this theory, you shouldn't call the period legal tampering. You shouldn't have the word tampering in it if you don't expect there to be tampering. Not that I'm going to be mad if the Vikings end up getting the advantage here, but I just like last time this happened, was it last year? The two teams, they're like, go figure that shit out and let us know what you do.
It's Cardinals in Philadelphia.
Yeah. And they were like, just let's go ahead and we'll do a pick swap. So that's what I foresee here, if anything. It's just the Vikings don't have a third round pick because, of course, they don't. All right, Josh, we got Eric Thompson. We're bending his ear about Vikings football. What's your thing tonight?
Yeah. So obviously, quarterback's the main topic of discussion in terms of the Vikings draft. But I want to know from you, Eric, what is one position other than the quarterback spot that you want to see the Vikings address next weekend?
Well, I think a few definitely stand out, but if I had to pick the top one still that I think is the biggest position of need, I think interior defensive line is still a huge need for the Vikings. Like re-signing Jonathan Bullard was okay. It'd be also nice if the Vikings didn't depend on a pretty middle of the road player to play. I think Bullard had like 650 snaps last year.
Yeah.
Not ideal, and that was obviously Jerry Tillery and Jonah Williams were nice pickups as well, and especially for the price. Like in the commitment, it really seems like the current regime is saying we are leaving everything on the table for 2025 with salaries, with future and everything else like that. But again, I don't think those two are going to be long-term solutions. There's a lot of good options in the draft as well. Like it's a good kind of fit for if they're sticking around in that end of the first round or something like that. I like both Texas guys. I think Byron Murphy and was it Tavondre Sweat? There's so many. Yeah. I think they show up pretty often as non-quarterback options for the Vikings in a lot of those mock drafts, and I think that's a good reason for that. I'm personally rooting for Murphy because I think it would be hilarious to have Byron Murphy Jr. and Byron Murphy the second on the same defense. That would be really funny. Yeah, but speaking of the Byron Murphy that the Vikings already have, I think that's it's almost tradition at this point now. Like the Vikings could always use help at corner in the draft, and this seems to be very deep at this position. I think Arif Hassan's the consensus big board that everyone kind of uses as a really good overall barometer. I think there were 10 corners in the top 100 overall on Arif's big board. So that I think you can get a lot of good value if you're not spending a day one pick there. If you're really, if the Vikings are going up for a quarterback, I think that's a really good one. And I think like it's not just the interior of the line. The Vikings edge depth could probably need some help too. And the interior of the offensive line, especially if what was it CTESPN tweeted out that Reisner's coming back. So I mean, it's a done deal, right?
It's happening.
And on the off chance that doesn't happen, that'll probably be a need too. That again, it feels like I think I've said this before the last 4 drafts for most of these positions, but they remain needs. So I think interior offensive line or defensive line is still probably the largest glaring need, even with the guys they picked up, just to have a solid go-to, maybe not starter right out of the gate, but a future long-term starter, even with the guys that they've already picked up.
The edge one is particularly interesting for me just because Kwesi has never drafted an edge during his time in Minnesota.
Not yet, yeah.
I just am absolutely just fascinated with what his plan is at that position. Obviously, the free agent signings were good, but Grenard's really had one good year in the NFL. Andrew Van Ginkel is about to turn 30. He's only on a 2-year deal. So you still kind of need to plan for the future now rather than later in terms of that position. So I'm just, that's the one that I'm really most intrigued by heading into the draft.
Yep. Anything earlier, if they say defensive lineman, no matter where he lines up, I'm in. That sounds great.
Tyler, we haven't heard from you since our mock draft episode, and that was about 2 weeks ago. I want to ask you, if we are all correct, I think everybody on the show, we'll get to Eric in a second on his prediction. I want to, if the Vikings do indeed make this flashy trade up the board, and the next time they pick is 108, Tyler, who do you have in mind for that spot? Or if you don't have a guy, what position?
Probably defensive tackle, just someone who can be an effective rotational player, stop the run, do all the little things right. I think that would probably be ideal just because, you look at our other needs aside from quarterback, you've got maybe a guard in there, but I don't think a 4th round guard is going to supplant Blake Brandel or Reisner if he comes back. So you're really looking at more sort of depth guys, role players, once you hit day 3. So when you talk about, just maximizing the value of your fourth round pick, I would say, fill a position of need, because, that's going to equate to that player, getting, having a higher chance of actually starting.
Okay. Secondarily, Tyler, do you think if T'Vondre Sweat's DUI tumble is grave enough to get him to the fourth round, do you think Kwesi would give him a second shot with that value?
I mean, I'm sure he would, but I'm not convinced that he's going to fall all the way to the fourth round. I think there's enough interest among teams in T'Vondre Sweat where he's going to be like a late day 2 guy.
Okay.
But like Christian Boyd is one that I look at and just think, he could probably be in the fourth round and provide a lot of the things that T'Vondre Sweat does. There's other guys too, like, your Gabe Halls and whatnot, where, they profile as just a stereotypical run stopping defensive lineman. I'm not saying that Gabe Hall will go in the fourth round necessarily, but there are plenty of those types of players. So it's not just like T'Vondre Sweat or bust.
Okay. Brevin, let's get into some more draft stuff with Eric Thompson, Daily Norseman. What do you got?
Yeah, so we touched a little bit on, I think it's kind of obvious. It seems like we're going quarterback in a trade-up scenario. And then Josh just asked you about outside of the quarterback position. So not asking your prediction yet, but what would Eric Thompson do if he was in Kwesi's seat in the draft? Like what would you recommend for Kwesi to pull the trigger on?
Well, I'd recommend, if at all possible, trading up for one of those top 3 quarterbacks without throwing in the additional first rounder in 2025. That'd be my recommendation, because that'd be great. That's kind of the dream scenario, of course. Like, I think at this point, Caleb Williams has basically been rubber stamped as a Bear ever since Field left to Pittsburgh. I think that's not realistic. I think he's going number 1 overall. It'd be a huge shock if he didn't. But getting Daniels or May while keeping the plethora of flexibility that we just talked about in 2025 and not having to mortgage any more of that future, besides the, obviously the couple of first rounders this year that it's going to take to trade up. I mean, that would be an absolute dream for me. That said, and if O'Connell and Kwesi really truly believe that Daniels or May is the guy, like if and he's attainable, and if they think one or both of those can kind of be that franchise or altering quarterback that Vikings fans have dreamed about for decades at this point, then I would recommend going full Kevin Costner in draft day and just writing whatever it takes for blank on the post-it note. Like, because I mean, Adolfo Mensa's only in his 3rd season, KOC's only his 3rd season as head coach. But I think they realize how important this draft is for their respective futures. Because if after all the research and all the interviews and all the number crunching, they think one of those 2 guys is worth taking that big risk on, because again, like, this is a crapshoot. Teams spend millions upon millions of dollars, and they're lucky if they get a 50% hit rate on first round quarterbacks. It's still, it's still a crapshoot. The draft always has been. That's kind of what makes it interesting. It makes it compelling TV. It allows us to talk about it ad nauseum for months and months and months before the draft actually happens. But if you think there's one of the guys, that is the guy, I would recommend moving mountains to get the guy. Get one of your top 3. If you're okay with someone outside the top 3 and you think you can save on some of that draft capital, do that as well. But whatever you think your guy is, because that's you can't have Sam Darnold sitting here starting all 17 games next year. That is going to cause an absolute, again, if it's letting the guy of the future learn and taking him along slowly, that's one thing. But if you don't have a discernible plan after Darnold, that's going to be a big problem, I think.
Kind of diving deeper into that, I was just sitting in my chair in my living room, as I do earlier today after work, and I wanted to get your opinion on it, because I'm an idiot. So let's say we trade 2 first round picks for up to 5, and there could be a mid round pick, but for clarity's sake, 8 and 20 or 11 and 23 for 5 to get with LA to take JJ McCarthy. In your mind, does it help that coping if you say we didn't trade 2 first round picks, we swapped first round picks and only added a first round pick on top of it? Do you think I'm an idiot for thinking that sounds way cooler and way better?
Well, it's technically true. That's the whole thing. It's like they gave up 3 first-round picks for this pick. It's usually not true because you're swapping that 1 first-round pick. So you're giving up 2 additional picks. So no, you're not an idiot for thinking that
Thank
way.
you.
And I believe that 11 and 23 for 5 was I think the Ringer did a mock draft, like a live one today, and that was the exact trade that they made with Los Angeles to I think to trade up for McCarthy. So like that's that is definitely in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, that just clicked in my head earlier today, and I was like, "Whoa, that makes this way easier."
If you want to get deeper into this for, whatever article you might write before or after the draft, is technically it would be a first, 2 seconds, and then whatever else, because that's how the Vikings got that pick from the Texans. So if you really want to juice it up in a word salad to make it sound less painful and egregious, it's just semantics. But we just completely leave out that the pick swap is a thing. It's just I think it's the gaudy or the juiciness of like, oh my God, we're gonna have to give up 3 firsts and then some. It goes up every damn day. That's one of the things I'm most looking forward to this being over. Is every time I open Twitter, some Patriots asshole is saying, well, we're going to need 3 first-rounders and then Darisaw before we start listening. It's like, really?
Throw in Jefferson just for good measure.
If the draft was in May, it'd be 6 first-round picks.
Yeah. There was one of those aggregators that Eric seems to love that said that it's going to take 5 first-rounders. Like, is that even legal? Like, can you give that many up? I was like, what are we doing here? And it's the same thing with the Jefferson trade in general. I'm going to be more excited, not that he'll be on the team. It's that I don't have to listen to trade bullshit anymore when that deal gets done. So that's my soapbox. Josh, you are up. We got 2 more for Eric Thompson a week before the draft.
Yeah, so we've done a lot of draft talk. Let's step away from that a little bit. It's a very sensitive topic in Minnesota right now. What, Eric, is your favorite free agency signing so far this offseason for the Vikings?
You mean other than the obvious re-signing of tush push specialist Brandon Powell, right? Like,
I mean, you could do that one if you want.
Anytime that you can re-sign a 180-pound guy that you inexplicably did tush push. Okay, I'm still mad about that play. No, but picking Powell back up was great. Actually, I like him on the team. He's versatile. That's good for wide receiver depth. Or maybe what's the XFL Hall of Fame kicker, John Parker Romo.
Mm-hmm.
I like that one too. As soon as you put on the Vikings jersey as a kicker, it's basically like wearing a cursed amulet. So like, does the kicker really matter? But in all seriousness, I did like the Grenard signing, but like, I don't think it's probably my favorite because it's still quite a bit of money for, like you mentioned, it's someone who's had a really good year, and kind of his best case scenario is literally being a discount version of Danielle Hunter. Like that's good. I'm like, he's younger, he was a little cheaper, and I think he'll be good in the Flores scheme. But again, it was still a pretty penny to pay. I think probably my favorite signings were the Van Ginkel and Cashman. And again, the Van Ginkel's not exactly spring chicken, but I think they're both productive players. They both seem like they're going to be really good fits in the Brian Flores defense, and neither one broke the bank either. Like, and what was it? Van Ginkel was 2 for 20 and Cashman was 3 for 25. Like, those are very palatable deals for guys that are probably going to start on the defense, I would say. And when you sign the player, and I always take this, if the general consensus of the team you're signing away from the fan base that he just left is like, man, we're really going to miss that guy, it's usually a good sign. And I think we got that, especially for Van Ginkel. A lot of Dolphins fans I saw on the timeline were just, they really liked him. And Cashman, of course, Sky Yuma, get to bring a gopher back home. That's always cool too. And I think that they're both going to be pretty productive players in the defense, and the price is right. And again, the overarching theme is, they're not giving these guys 5-year deals with fully guaranteed. They're still leaving everything on the table for maximum flexibility in the following season.
I really like the Van Ginkel signing too. It's like, not even just because like he's a good edge rusher, because if you just look at his pro reference page or something, like, you're gonna think, oh, this guy only had 6 sacks last year, but he doesn't just do that. He's a great run defender. He steps back in coverage. He's just kind of like Brian Flores alluded to it, just kind of like a Josh Metellus type of guy who could do a little bit of everything. And I'm really excited to see what he can do in Minnesota this year, especially being reunited with Brian Flores, who drafted him.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more Swiss Army knives you have in the defense, especially with Flores going crazy with his schemes, the better, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Eric, the last thing we got before we get you off to bed. You're not going to believe this. Last Friday, I had an inaugural fan show where we had 3 fans I never met. They came on. We discussed questions akin to the ones tonight, and we got to the end of the show, just like now, and I asked them for a draft prediction. They each spent about 2 minutes apiece. And inexplicably, but it was okay. Inexplicably, they all predicted Michael Penix to the Vikings, and they were not friends beforehand.
Wow.
They were all over the United States. I felt
Look
like
at
I was,
Brevin.
yeah, I thought I was being trolled, but no, they meant it. And so, I mean, it was easy to come up with the graphic for the episode because it was the Michael Penix show. So I want to know from you. I don't know, maybe you'll pick Penix too, but in terms of a prediction in the first round, you can take your endorsement, throw it out the window. What do you think we will be talking about 7 days from right now in the first round for these Vikings?
Okay, well, first I'll guarantee something about the draft. No matter what the Vikings do, a large swath of Vikings fans will be unhappy because they didn't get their guy. No, okay, or even if they did get their guy, they paid too much for him, or they traded up too much for him. You know, like even if the Vikings stood pat at 11 and got one of the top 3 quarterbacks, there'd be people like, well, there was a reason he slid this bad. You know, what is Quasey doing? Why didn't again that you can take that prediction to the bank. Many Vikings fans seem to refuse to be satisfied with anything that the team does. I am not one of those fans, but I don't think the Vikings are going to get the top of my wish list. We covered that. I think one of those top May or Daniels would definitely be my dream scenario, even especially if they don't have to give the farm to him. But I think. Again, I hate making draft predictions. Even when I wrote all the time, I for Daily Norseman, like I avoided mock drafts because every single one of them is incorrect. My draft stance is more like there are far too many guys to research in college football. I read the Cliff's notes on all these guys. Just tell me who the Vikings drafted, and then I'll dive deep on them. That said, I like JJ McCarthy. I do. I think he has a lot of tools that you look for in an NFL quarterback, and the dude obviously won some big games in college. Like that, again, albeit with a supporting cast that we're going to see a lot of them in the NFL draft next weekend because a lot of them are going to get drafted. He was surrounded by great players. It was a great team in Michigan. It seems to me like the Vikings have offers on the table. They have discussed things with New England. They have discussed things with Arizona at 3 and 4. I can guarantee you they've done that. But as of right now, and maybe this is all smokescreen stuff. Maybe they're, I'm not 100% sure that it's those offers, whatever they have, are going to prove to be enough to make either team trade back, especially the Patriots, because they probably need a quarterback as well. Like I don't, for me, it personally doesn't make sense for the Patriots to trade back if they're going to get a quarterback. Like again, they can get more draft capital and they have a lot more immediate needs than the Vikings, but still. But that's why I think McCarthy ends up being the first pick by the Vikings in the first round. If it's the 11th pick, I think that's much more palatable because then they didn't have to give up any additional capital. I think it'll probably have to be in that previously discussed 5 to 7 range. Like I think that it's going to have to be up with the Chargers, something like that. And again, if KOC and Quasey think that McCarthy can be the guy, then cool, I'm on board because they're staking their futures a lot more than I'm staking my future on this. Like I'm gonna have to be pissed off for a couple more years. Oh no, like I don't think it's and again, I don't think it's outlandish to think that McCarthy can succeed in the NFL. I think he has a lot of tools. Again, he's not at the top of my wish list. So that's my official prediction. I think they do end up with McCarthy. And then I spend these next several years and months praying that he's not the next Christian Ponder.
Well, that's what Vegas, not Ponder, but the Vegas prediction has it settled around, at least for now, about, was it plus 130 now? I think the odds got a little jacked up today. All right, let's see, Eric. What is your Twitter? Don't you have an NDSU prospect to plug? Isn't that usually your jam?
Oh, no. After the Trey Lance and Carson Wentz debacles, now I have my NDSU wine bottle back here somewhere with the last, and they're not even winning championships anymore. South Dakota State's winning them now. It's just it's a bad no. It's always great to have one football team that doesn't perennially let me down, but no one to get too crazy excited about. And
and where do we find you? Where do the viewers find you on Twitter?
It is at Eric_J_Thompson. I have to throw in all those underscores because it turns out Eric Thompson is a very common name. I actually graduated high school with another Eric Thompson. That was very confusing.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
All right, sir. Well, we appreciate you coming on. I hope you'll come back after the draft so we can kind of decompress our predictions, whether they were right or wrong, and go from there. Next week on the show, we have Sean Borman, Matt Fries, Jarrett Bailey, Jackson McIntyre, all getting us ready for the draft. Eric, any closing arguments before we sign off?
Nope. Just Skull Vikes. Let's go get your guys. And I am excited to talk about actual new members of the team instead of all these weird permutations and possibilities and reading all these terrible things that aren't going to happen. So I'm excited. Yes, I would love to come back on and talk about actual Vikings players rather than theories.
All right, well, then we will assuredly get you on for after the draft because we'll have tangible players to discuss. All right, guys, we will talk to you soon. Eric, thanks again, and you guys take it easy.
See
Later.
ya.